All right, so big news today, which is the jobs report for June. What we see is that 209,000 jobs were added in June, which is lower than previous marks, really since I guess about 2 to 3 years ago, whenever the pandemic first started. But those are job additions nonetheless, with the employment rate staying at 3.6%, the unemployment rate. So, Blake, what do you think is going on there? Is this a good report for the overall economy?
Well, it's good for inflation. It's bad for the overall worker market, right? So, for inflation, the slowing of hiring is showing that, yeah, maybe there's a little bit of money leaving the economic system. And when the money leaves the economic system, inflation goes down because inflation is when there's too much money chasing too few goods. We've seen that for a long time recently. That's why your milk went from $4 a gallon to $6 a gallon, right?
Hmm.
So good for inflation, bad for the worker. But believe it or not, let me read this stat here. This is the first time in 15 months that the job creation came in below Wall Street expectations. So the first time in basically a year and a half that the job numbers have came in underneath Wall Street's expectations. But here's the good news. It is the 30th straight month where there have been a net positive of jobs created, which is actually
Yeah,
one of the longer streaks that we have pretty much ever seen.
that's
So
really
to answer your
impressive. You
question,
could you could
yeah.
put
Hmm.
Well, I was just gonna say you could attribute that the first half really to the jobs that were recreated after the COVID pandemic, right? What happened
Yeah.
is a lot of
Hmm.
companies saw the writing on the wall. Hey, business is going to shut down. Let's cut staff so that way we don't have to pay them. And then, okay, as everything started to ease back up, they just went on a hiring spree because you know what? At this point, they needed the workers to, again, begin moving to the next phase after the pandemic. But anyways, I didn't
Yeah.
mean to cut you off. What were you saying there?
No, I was just going to say to answer your question, to me, this shows that the economy right now is in balance, but it is continuing on a negative trend, in my opinion. Now, with that being said, yeah, we do still see jobs created. That's a good thing. We still do see a relatively, still historically low interest rates, although, historically low, it's still high compared to where it was 5 years ago or 3 years ago or 2 years ago, even. So, what we're seeing is as interest rates go up and as job creation goes down, we're seeing the market cool off. In the title of the article that I just read, it went from red hot to lukewarm, right? So we've
Wow.
seen this kind of cooling effect take place throughout the whole market. And uh, with that being said, it is kind of minimizing economic growth. So we're not going to be growing probably, but we are going to be slowing down. So
So
maybe GDP will go from whatever it's been at, usually around 2% per quarter. Maybe it's at 1% next quarter. It's hard to tell, but that's definitely
yeah,
what we're going to
yeah.
see.
So I definitely agree with you. I think we're seeing stagnation in the market. I don't know if we're seeing recession or a massive amount of receding numbers yet, but I do think that we are seeing a cool down, and I am worried that as things continue to cool down, that the slide downward will become much more rapid in the next coming few
Yeah.
months.
And that's the question. On the show, we talk a lot about the Federal Reserve, who's in control of increasing interest rates on money that banks borrow. So
Yeah,
they don't directly control the market, but they increase the amount of money that banks have to pay to borrow money. And
yeah.
then banks, therefore, increase the rates to the consumer because they have to make their margin, right? So my
Hmm.
question is, at what point will these rate increases stop the economy? Because right now the economy, it's like a
Yeah.
ball, right? It's like a soccer ball. It's
Hmm.
spinning, but it's not spinning as fast as it used to be. And
That's true.
what
That's true.
happens when the overall economy slows to a point where they start layoffs? And when the layoffs
Absolutely.
start, that's when we have to be at least cautious with how we start spending our money, right? So
Well,
for those
I
of
think
us that are investors, hold your money a little bit tighter until you see what happens. I wouldn't say stop spending, but I definitely kind of look at the books at least before you go and make a big purchase.
absolutely, and especially with consumers, when you look around and start seeing, some of your fellow citizens being laid off, you kind of hold on a little bit tighter because you question, will that be me next? Yeah, interesting. We'll see what happens with the unemployment rate right now, staying at 3.6%. Jobs actually added to the economy for now. But like you said, cooling off from those historic highs we've saw after the COVID pandemic the last couple of years. Blake,
Yeah.
thanks so much for your analysis.
Thank you.